Hey guys, it's Mrs. Longmire here. In the last several lessons, we've talked about your reading voice, the voice that reads the words and reads what's in the pictures, and your thinking voice, that voice that whispers to you what those things in the words and the pictures, what they mean, right? And sometimes your thinking voice talks to you even after you're finished reading. And that's what we're going to talk about today. Sometimes when we're finished reading, we're thinking about all of the details in the story. That helps us to retell the story. Readers can retell text, which means readers can tell you what the story was about in their own words. And we're going to talk about retelling today and teach you how you can retell, okay? Readers retell the most important information. And so you want to, when you're thinking through with your thinking voice and you're thinking about all of those details in the text, you want to think about the most important details. And you want to make sure when you're retelling that you put those details in order in the way they happened in the story. Okay. And so today we're going to work on that. We're going to work on retelling and what is the most important, what is most important in the story and what are those most important details. And today we're going to look at fiction or literature, which are like stories. Okay. And there are parts that make up stories or fiction that are really important that we're going to talk about. The first thing is characters. There's always characters in a story. And the main characters, the most important characters are the ones that you're going to want to mention when you're retelling. You want to think about who was in the story and who were the most important characters in the story. Now, sometimes a character can be a boy, like in this picture. Sometimes it can be a girl. It can be an older person or a younger person, a child. It could be an animal. Characters can be lots of different things. And so we'll talk about that more later. But you always want to think about the character. And you also want to think about the setting. Yeah, the setting is where it happens. It could be in a house or in a building or in a school, or it could be outside, or also the setting could be the city or the state or the country that it takes place in. It could be lots of different things. And also the setting is the time or the when, right? The time of day. The author might be very specific and put the hours that it happened, the minutes that it happened, the month or the day or the season, or they could talk about in the morning or in the afternoon or in the evening. So the where and the when makes up the setting. And that is important information when you're retelling. So if we put those two things together, the setting and the character, that's going to make up the first part of our boxes for retelling. We're going to retell this in 3 boxes. And our first box has the setting, remember the where and the when, and the character, the most important characters that we read about in the story, okay? And then the next part is going to be the problem. There's always a problem in the story. So I've got this flag that says, what's the problem? Right? There's always got to be a problem. Something has to happen to those characters. They want something, they need something, something happens to them and they need help, but there's always a problem. And so our flag with the question mark, like, what's the problem? That is going to be the picture that we use in our chart. And so the next section, the second part of our box of our retelling is the problem. And the setting and the character and the problem all are usually mentioned at the beginning of the story. They're kind of setting the scene. They're going to tell you where it's happening, who it's happening to, and then some sort of problem. They're setting it all up. Okay, so that those things usually happen towards the beginning of the story. And then if you got a problem, usually it gets solved somehow. And so the next part of the retell would be the solution, or how does that problem get solved? And it's got somebody with his hand up like, yeah, we did it, right? We fixed the problem. You either fix the problem or someone helps you fix the problem, but somehow it gets solved and they get something fixed, right? So he's going, yeah, like that. That is the picture that we're going to use for the third box, our last box. And it's for the solution, the answer to the problem. And so when we're retelling, we're really retelling in three different parts, three different boxes. We have the setting, the where and the when, and the characters, and then the problem. Something happens to those characters, and then the problem gets solved with the solution. And so those are the most important parts of the story that we want our thinking voice to be thinking about once we finish the story. And we're trying to retell what happened in our own words. Those are the most important pieces. Okay. And so I'm going to show you how this could look. I'm going to model and show you how this works first. And then you're going to get a chance to try some with me. Okay. So if you remember, a couple of lessons ago, we read Pete the Cat, and we read about how he gets a pet for Pete. And so I'm just going to go through here, and I'm going to see if I can pick out those most important pieces so that I can retell it to you. And the way we're retelling today is just talking. We're just talking about the story. We're not writing anything today. We're just going to do it orally, which just means talking about it, okay? So the first piece of information I need is the setting. So I think about Pete the Cat, and I'm just going to flip through the pages here. You know, I know that he goes to a pet store at the very beginning to get a pet. And so that could be the setting. He's going to the pet store, but also the setting can change in the story because he also goes home and he paints pictures of his pet at home, and then he goes to school, and then he goes back home. And so the setting sort of changes, but it's Pete's town that you know, where Pete lives, his town, and it starts at the pet store and his house. And so that's the setting. Now, when I see a sun here on the first page, so I know it's daytime. It's sometime during the day, but then I know that it lasts a couple of days long in the story. And so that's the when. It's during the daytime. It doesn't really tell us a season, but we know it's a school year because he goes to school and he has show and tell at school. They talked about that, and so I know that that it's probably during the school year sometime, but it doesn't really give us the details of the when. Just I know that it's daytime. So that's the setting. Okay, so it's pet store and home and school, Pete's pet store and his house and his school, and then in the daytime. Okay, so the character. Well, I know Pete the Cat and his mom. She takes him to the pet store, and she comes up with a good idea at the end about painting a huge picture so everyone can see. So I know his mom and Pete, and then he does mention friends that all want pictures. Like he talks about Bob and and Goldie, his goldfish. That's part of a character too, right? Goldie, Pete, his mom, and his friends. Those are the characters in this story. Okay. So then we go to the problem. What's Pete's problem? Well, he paints. Remember, he paints so many. Everybody wants a picture because he's such a good artist, and it looks just like Goldie. So he takes it to show and tell, and everybody wants a painting. Even his grandma wants a painting. And remember that he's also got to feed Goldie and do his homework, and so he just doesn't have enough time. And he ran out of paint, and he just doesn't have enough time to paint everyone a picture. So that's his problem. He just doesn't have the time or the paint to make everyone a picture of Goldie. So that's his problem. So then let me think about, does it get solved? And his mom steps in, right? Remember, she has an idea, and because he's like, I just don't have time. And she has that little light bulb, and she has the idea, and he makes that huge painting. They get a ladder, and he gets up on a ladder, and he makes this huge painting, and then they strap it to the car, and they go around, and now everyone in town can enjoy the painting. So they fixed it, right? Instead of making everyone a painting and running out of time and paint and not getting anything else done, they make a huge painting and put it on the car and everyone can enjoy. So they solved the problem. Yes. So those are the parts that make up a great retelling of a story. So if I were just going to retell this all together, I would say, okay, it happens in Pete's town, at his pet store, in his house, and his school. The characters are Pete the cat and Pete's mom and Goldie the goldfish and his friends. And Pete's problem is that he doesn't have enough time or paint or energy to make everybody a painting of Goldie that wants one, because everybody wants a painting of his goldfish. And so his mom helps him in the solution, and she comes up with an idea where he makes one big giant painting, straps it on the car, and then when they drive around town, everyone can enjoy the painting. So that's my retell. I put all those important pieces in order of how they happened. Do you think you guys could try it? I bet you can. So I had some links up that you probably could go on before this lesson. One book was The Little Red Hen. Even if you haven't had a chance to, you could even pause the video now and go on Epic and listen to The Little Red Hen, or maybe you know a little bit, about the Little Red Hen story. I tried to pick a story that lots of kids would know about. But in The Little Red Hen, if you don't, let me just flip through here really quickly. If you haven't had a chance to look at it yet, it's a little bit different version, but instead of bread, she's making cupcakes, and there's a fox and a crocodile and a hedgehog, and they don't want to help her. So the first thing she needs is who will get flour, and nobody helped her, so she did it herself. And then she needed butter, and they were all snoring and had other things to do, and so she went and got the butter herself. And then they needed sugar for the frosting, and they wouldn't help her, so she did it herself, right? And then she needed sprinkles for the top of her cupcakes, and nobody wanted to help, and so she did it herself. And finally, no one would help her carry them, so she carried them herself, and she set up her cupcake truck. And then she was open for business, and then they all wanted to help and eat a cupcake, and she said, nope, I'm sold out, right? They were too busy to help her, so they didn't get a cupcake. All right, so let's retell this story and start with the setting. I want you guys to think about, what do you think the setting of this story is? I'll kind of flip back through here and you think for a second. What were you thinking? Starts out at Little Red's house, doesn't it? She says home sweet home in the picture. Yeah. And it ends up at the end of the story, she's kind of at her food truck, right? At her cupcake truck. Yeah. So that's the where, Little Red's house and her cupcake truck. When do you think this takes place? Think for a second. When do you think it happens? Are you thinking daytime? Yeah. She opened it up and I see a sun in the picture. So it's during the day when people would be out buying cupcakes, right? Great job. So it happens at Little Red Hen's house, and in her cupcake truck, and it's daytime. Great job. Now let's move to characters. Think about the characters in this story. Think for a second. Did you say Little Red Hen? Yeah. Little Red Hen. She's the most important, the main character, isn't she? Can you think of any other characters? Think for a second. Did you say fox and crocodile and hedgehog? Yeah. Those were the three characters that were with her that wouldn't help, right? Great job. So we've got our first box. We've got those details. Now the problem. What is the problem, or Little Red Hen's problem? Think about it. Did you say no one would help Little Red Hen? Yeah. They were all too busy. They wanted to sleep, or they were busy playing with their yo-yo. They had other things, more important things to do, didn't they? So the problem is no one would help Little Red Hen. And so she had to do all of it by herself, didn't she? That was the problem. So then, is there a solution? How does her problem get fixed? Think about it. They didn't get to eat a cupcake, did they? They didn't work for it. The crocodile and the hedgehog and the fox, they didn't get to eat a cupcake. She told them that she was sold out, and maybe they'll learn a lesson. You think next time maybe they'll help her? I do. So I think her problem got fixed because they learned their lesson. And next time they'll help Little Red Hen so that they can have a cupcake, right? Okay, so if we put that all together, we'd say setting it happens at Little Red Hen's house and at Little Red Hen's cupcake truck, food truck. It happens in the daytime. Little Red is the main character. There's Little Red, the fox, and the crocodile, and the hedgehog. And the problem was no one would help Little Red make the cupcakes. No one would help her do anything. And the solution is she just did it by herself. But then the fox and the crocodile and the hedgehog didn't get any cupcakes. But they learned their lesson. And we think next time they'll help Little Red. There, you did it. You just retold Little Red Hen in your own words using the most important parts of the story. Great job. Okay, so if you would want to do more, do another one. Let's just try to do another one. Let's do another one together, and then I'll show you some other ones that you can do later as sort of your assignment if you were in Mrs. Longmire's class. But let's do one more. You know Goldilocks and the Three Bears, right? So I put a link to Epic on here of the Goldilocks and the Three Bears story. And so you have that, and you can go back and I picked stories that could be read to you because I know these books have a lot of words. So you can listen to the story, or your parents can read it to you, or an older brother or sister, and then retell it using these parts. So if we think about the Goldilocks and the Three Bears, what do you think the setting is? Think about it for a second. Did you say the Three Bears' house? And it was around breakfast, wasn't it? Because they were going to eat their breakfast, their porridge. Yeah. So it's daytime. It happens at the Three Bears' cottage, right? Very good. Who are the characters in this story? Think about it. Did you say Goldilocks? Papa Bear, Mama Bear, and Baby Bear? Great job. So we've got the first box. Now, what is the problem in this story? What's the problem? Think about it. Yeah, Goldilocks goes in their house and eats their porridge and sits and breaks Baby Bear's chair and sleeps in Baby Bear's bed and falls asleep, doesn't she? Those are some problems. Ate all Baby Bear's porridge, broke Baby Bear's chair, sleeping in Baby Bear's bed. That is a big problem, isn't it? Think about what the solution is. What happens? How does the problem get fixed? Did you say Goldilocks leaves? She runs out of the house once they get home? Yeah, she wakes up, doesn't she? And she runs away, and they never see her again, right? And it says they lived happily ever after. So Goldilocks leaves and never comes back, right? And they live happily ever after. So that's the solution. Great job. So we put all those pieces together. It happens at the Three Bears cottage in the daytime, around breakfast time. The characters are Goldilocks and the Three Bears. The problem, Goldilocks eats all their porridge, sits in Baby Bear's chair and breaks it, and falls asleep in Baby Bear's bed. And the solution? The baby bear comes home. The baby bear and the mother bear and father bear come home, wake Goldilocks up. She runs out and she never comes back, and they live happily ever after. So if you put all those pieces together, you just retold Goldilocks and the Three Bears in your own words. Great job. So if you were Mrs. Longmire's class, I would have you do some more stories like this. So I picked out some other stories on Epic that you could listen to and then retell in these parts of the story. So there's Sleeping Beauty on here, and also there is Rapunzel. And even if you've heard some of those stories before, I would listen to this again, because sometimes there's different versions and different characters that are in some versions and not in others. So make sure you listen to it again and then do your retelling, okay? And also there is Chicken Little. So there's Sleeping Beauty, Rapunzel, Chicken Little. There's lots of other stories like the Three Pigs on Epic. You can search Epic. If you don't have Epic, you can do this with any story, any storybook that you have. And so there might be other kind of traditional stories that you know really well that you could practice this retelling with. And if you want to print out one like with the 3 boxes, like Mrs. Longmire has up here on the chart, that has the character and setting, problem and solution, you can print out one like this, and I've got it on the screen now that you can like download and print if you have a printer. If not, you could just draw 3 boxes, right? And you could just draw a face for character, and maybe a house for the trees, and then a little flag with the problem, just a question mark for what the problem is, and then a little person with their hand up for the solution. You could even make your own, but then just touch these different parts when you're retelling, okay? And so that might help you to make sure you have all the important parts of the story that you need for retelling. Okay, so if you were in Mrs. Longmire's class, that's what I would have you do, but your teacher might have a better idea.